what's interesting with the market now is in the U.S., maybe 10 years ago, like 10% of practices were corporate practices, right? Today, it's like 50%. Okay. In Canada, well, 10 years ago, it was maybe 1%. Now it's about 10%. Part of it is we have a lot of more stricter rules that the RCDSO kind of puts into create sort of a barrier, right? So that, dentists own these practices, but it's happening here too. And, as you said, like a lot of these things we're talking about are standard practice in any kind of business, except dentistry. So now you have the, kind of this wave of corporate dentistry starting to kind of encroach upon in a lot of areas. My question to you is like, should a general dentist be worried about this? How do you think dentistry is going to change in the next, a decade or so? My opinion is, there's always going to be a need. People would much more likely to do business with a well-run, family-owned sort of practice, assuming they're really doing a good job, the customer service is good, the dental care is good. There's always going to be a need for that. But for the average dentist that doesn't think about customer service, doesn't try to create a great patient experience, a corporate dental practice is going to seem more attractive because they are thinking about these things. They definitely put focus on customer service. So what's your thoughts on that? Do you think an independently owned dental practice, it has a bright future, provided it does certain things, or what's your take on the sort of expansion of corporate dentistry and DSOs? Is it something that people should be worried about?
The competitive advantage of a non-DSO practice is the same as it's always been. It's if you have a top shelf experience, again, leadership, systems, training, marketing, right? If you are intentional about building a solid team of people who care about the patients, and the patients know that, like people will go where they have trust and rapport with the team. In a DSO or other organizational structure, dental office, in a corporate office, you're going to have less of a personal experience. It's not going to be terrible because some of them are doing a good job. But there will be more turnover. There'll be a little less of a personal touch. There'll be a little less of a direct relationship, in terms of what you could build as a really intentional solo practice. Now, the average practice, even the average practice who thinks they're good, but they really don't know the difference and don't have any data to prove it, and they don't have any objective assessment or otherwise, they're wide open for getting beat up in this transfer, right? In this transition. It's going to happen. Like the corporates are not dying by any stretch of the imagination. They have deep pockets, they have unlimited resources to handle pretty well whatever comes at them. And the average practice is what's getting beaten up right now. The better practices, the ones that are doing the kind of things that we're talking about, they're not suffering. They're having their best months ever, right? So majority of our client base is, it's not even a factor for them. They're just killing it. They're having, they're having the best time they have ever had with their teams. The team is, again, if the dentist gets the team engaged and the team engages the customer, everything changes. It's like any other business. Ritz-Carlton isn't worried about, the other hotels that are, trying to nip at its heels. Disney is not worried about anybody else in any of the businesses that they're in. Apple's not worried about any other business, right? So it's just, can you do a better job than anybody else? But it has to start with, internally, do your people know why they're there? Do they care? Do they actually care about people? Are you doing what's in the best interest of the patients, the practice, and the team, not just the team, not just me, right? Do you care? What do you do for your community? How involved are you? Like, how do people perceive you in the community? That's all marketing, right? It's not just spraying marketing out. It's what goodwill do we do in the community? How do people see us, right? And so if you take the time to build that broad base of positioning in your community, if you're the key leader in terms of giving great content to your people, if you have to your community, if you do many things for the community, if you are positioned in a way that is very difficult to shake, then corporate's not going to even be a factor for you. But if you're just average and you're doing the same things you were doing 10 years ago today, then I'd be careful.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from the perspective of sort of a patient, because I've been at, as I moved around, I've traveled a lot. I've worked remotely in different places. I've been to a lot of different practices. And, one thing I hear from a lot of dentists is that, well, we treat our patients better, we have better experience. And my thinking was like, do you though? Because I've actually been in corporate dental practices, and their customer service was absolutely amazing. In fact, even when I left them, like they, said, oh, you're moving. Well, we have another practice in that area. We'd be happy to help you. Like even the way they ended the relationship was very nice and friendly. Like I felt bad to leave them. So I think in a privately owned dental practice, you definitely have the capacity to create an experience that I think corporate dentistry can't necessarily create, because they have logistical issues and scale. But it doesn't mean that just because you're in, a small independently owned practice, that comes by default. If you don't work at it, it doesn't mean naturally, oh, we have better experience. Not necessarily, not unless this is intentional, that you're really focusing on this. And in a lot of cases, what I see with practice is that they kind of check off in their mind, like, well, we're small, so we treat patients better. No, you don't, though. That's the problem. So I think the logistics of running a practice that you fully own, it does enable you to create, an experience that I think a DSO would have a hard time doing, because you have multiple dentists coming in, going. It's hard to have that personal connection with them. I mean, it's a large scale operation. But I think, my message to dentists would be like, don't think that if you're not actively focusing on these things, that it just happens by itself. It absolutely does not.
Yeah, great customer service is not a differentiator anymore. It is a seat. It gets you a seat at the table. Like, okay, you're at least in the running now. But you can't assume that just because it's a corporate office that you're doing a better job, because they have systems, they have processes, they have, economies of scale to even fix some of the lack of those areas, but they're not doing a bad job of it, right? It's just an assumption that you make, but it's not true. Again, look at big companies out there. Some of the best service examples are huge companies. So you can't say that out of the gate, but you do have an advantage that they don't, which is to get into the community, which is to get, build a base that they can't, because they won't have the energy or desire to do it, because they're doing well enough. The unshakable base that we built in our practice, as an example, was because we did more for the community than anybody else. And we made it an intentional part of our culture to do that. And we worked really hard on the culture. Like for us, team culture and building a cohesive team was just as important as doing quality dentistry. And it has to be, because if you want your team to love your patients, the only way they're going to do that is if there's actually like some significant attention about that. The patient will feel that the employee loves working there. And that will make a patient experience that is different. The processes, the things that you do, anyone can copy that, but they can't copy that trust, rapport, or that sense that this person actually does care about me. They can't copy that. So the hardest thing for anybody to copy in your practice is your engaged team. If you don't have that, though, then you're on par with everybody else. Because again, a great experience is standard today. It's expected.